CBC Vancouver News.
Our concerns have not been taken seriously. They've been diminished and dismissed.
Fed up. BC teachers asked the Labour Relations Board to help settle COVID-19 classroom concerns. Also,
yes, products of that are getting into the environment.
Toxins in the air, toxins in the water, fears of contamination in the Fraser after the New West Pier fire. Also,
and goodbye smoke, hello rain. Finally, an open your windows weekend in BC.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
good evening. Thanks for joining us. They are feeling pressure to work in unsafe conditions and say COVID-19 safety protocols aren't working.
And now BC teachers want the Labour Relations Board to help settle their concerns about the virus in their classrooms. As
Mickey Cowan reports, they're hoping the board will step in and force the province to address working conditions in schools during the pandemic.
The first 2 weeks of school have been a whirlwind for teachers.
We had what was, a 2-day, span to really get things ready. And I think now, like 1 week out, we needed more time.
She's spent long hours trying to figure out the new COVID-19 protocols, physical distancing, use of masks, how cohorts work. Many of the initial plans needing to adapt as they go.
It's very much like shifting sand. And you think you've got it, but then you don't.
The Education Ministry says when issues arise across the province, they address them.
And that's exactly what's happening. Nobody expected perfect.
But the BC Teachers Federation did expect more by now, so it's appealing to the Labour Relations Board to step in.
The BCTF would not be taking this step if we didn't feel that government had failed to keep teachers and students safe.
One of the things it's asking for is remote learning for all and extra staffing dedicated to it so more people can learn from home. They also want face shields for teachers and more cleaning. Experts say the BCTF's move could lead to mediation.
I think that's what the Federation wants, and that's probably what they'll get.
The ministry says a lot is already being done to make sure teachers and students are safe. It's hired 1,500 additional staff members to help out, from custodial staff to bus drivers. But even with the additional measures, there are still some COVID exposures happening connected to students and teachers.
I can speak for Surrey with 11 schools facing some sort of exposure. Teachers want answers. Teachers want concrete plans and not things that are constantly shifting.
There's no word yet on when the Labour Board will make a decision on next steps. The BCTF has asked for an expedited process. As for the Ministry of Education, it says it can't comment on matters before the board. Mickey Cowan, CBC News, Vancouver.
The province is pushing the advice to stick to 6 ahead of the weekend. This comes as the latest COVID-19 numbers for BC were released this afternoon. Health officials say the cases we're seeing today are a direct result of how we spent our Labor Day long weekend and stress the importance of breaking the chains of transmission to turn the trend around. BC has 139 new cases of COVID-19, plus 40 historic cases from August 11th and September 16th, accounting for people who didn't have personal health numbers. The total number of active cases is now just over 1,800. There were 3 additional deaths, bringing the number of people killed by the virus in BC to 223. And of the health regions, Fraser Health has the most confirmed cases at just over 4,000, while Vancouver Coastal Health has had 2,817 cases.
And Johanna Wagstaffe joins us now with the weekend forecast and the, I guess we could call it the smoke cast. Still pretty murky in behind you there.
It's true, yeah. Visually, it doesn't look like much has changed. In fact, visibility hasn't really improved at all. but the air quality health index is now at moderate or better for the South Coast, and I can feel it out here. It does not feel as oppressive. Take a look at the radar right now. We are into this new weather pattern. That pinwheel low sitting off our coast has moved in, and that is mixing the air up. In fact, seeing some showers cross south of the Fraser between Abbotsford and Chilliwack. Expect some lightning strikes there and some heavier downpours across the South Coast. You can see those showers moving up from the southern Gulf Islands, expected to cross into Metro Vancouver in the next couple of hours. But that's all thanks to this spinning low that is finally mixing out the air. Now, we still have an air quality statement in place. It may take an extra day for things to mix out of the interior, but this weekend is the weekend to open the windows. In fact, by tonight, we can open them for sleeping. We're just looking at localized smoke left now. So areas like the Strait, in fact, where I am behind me, a little longer to clear out than the rest of the South Coast. Temperatures right now a little cooler as well as we get into this new air mass, 17 right now at YVR. And we are expecting cooler temperatures this weekend as well. Cooler, more showery, but fresher, and I can't wait for you two to feel it. It's good.
Yes, can't wait to take a breather. Thanks, Joe. Well, Stanley Park is reopening fully to cyclists and cars by next weekend. The park was closed to all vehicle traffic at the beginning of the pandemic in response to the need for greater physical distancing amid calls for more access to recreational space for cycling and walking. The park board says the roads will fully reopen to vehicles and the seawall to cyclists. The park will be closed overnight next Friday to allow crews to remove signs and traffic cones, with the restored routes opening the following Saturday.
Well, the fire that destroyed much of the new Westminster pier last Sunday is still smoldering tonight. Crews are dismantling it in hopes of finally putting it out.
And their efforts can't come soon enough for residents choking under the haze. But as Deborah Goebel reports, there are now concerns about the environmental impact.
For 5 days now, New Westminster fire crews have been working to completely extinguish the flames that are still popping up at the New Westminster Waterfront Park Pier. At this point, crews are removing the old decking, which is the only way they can be confident the fire is completely out. But the concern is not just for the flames.
The pier's on fire. The pier's constructed out of a material that are impregnated with creosote. So yes, products of that are getting into the environment. And we're working with Environment Canada, Ministry of Environment, Coast Guard, to make sure that we do what we can to protect that material getting into the water system.
The environmental impact on the waters off the pier has been a big concern.
It was a special place for many people in our community, and to see that place on fire, I think, has been really difficult.
Booms have been in place since Monday morning with the hope the runoff can be stopped from getting into the Fraser River, but those who fish in the area aren't so sure.
The creosote is on the outside of the logs, and I would say you're going to see some creosote melting. It's going to be falling into the water.
But for residents living in the area, the real concern is about breathing in the smoke.
So my concern is about the air. It's still like difficult breathing with the mask on. And at the same time, with the air there.
Our PM 2.5 is almost the same as the worst time in Beijing. So it causes cancer, I believe, lung cancers. So that's my main concern.
Yeah, I work right there, and it was really challenging for the first few days. And the staff weren't happy, but now we're feeling okay.
While the air quality is getting a little bit better, New Westminster's mayor says it will be a while before life goes back to normal.
It was a special place for many people in our community, and to see that place on fire, I think, has been really difficult.
A suspect has been arrested for arson-related offenses in connection to the fire. He's been released on several conditions and has not been named by police.
It's a travesty what happened. I think whoever the guy, I heard it's an arson.
It could be weeks before the fire is completely out, but the mayor has said the pier will eventually be rebuilt. Deborah Goebel, CBC News, New Westminster.
A landmark reconciliation agreement has been reached with the Lake Babine Indian Band in northern BC. The pact between the band and the federal government and provincial governments provides immediate land and financial benefits totaling $200 million. 20,000 hectares of land is being transferred to the band, worth about $150 million. The agreement signed this morning commits the parties to further negotiations to recognize and implement Lake Babine Nation rights.
We as a whole want to work with everybody in industry and everyone that's involved to pave the way for a proper economy, to get the head start on a most important and critical time in our lives.
The added funding will help support children and family services, education, and language and justice programs. It also increases Lake Babine Nation's participation in the forestry sector in that region.
BC's oil and gas services sector just got a $50 million boost to clean up dormant wells.
This funding will allow 79 BC-based service companies to hire local workers and undertake cleanup activities on nearly 1,900 wells here in British Columbia.
This money is the first installment of funding to deal with wells not used in the last 5 years and won't be coming back. Starting November 1st, communities can apply for the second increment of funding by nominating dormant spaces to clean up. In total, 3 programs were announced today. The government estimates they will create up to 1,200 jobs in the oil and gas sectors.
TransLink is receiving more than $500 million in emergency funding from both the provincial and federal governments.
This significant one-time funding will cover the operational losses that have happened to date and the losses we project through the current and next fiscal years. It'll ensure service levels for transit and ferries are maintained across the province and that fares remain affordable as part of BC's Restart Plan.
TransLink is receiving $644 million to be exact, while BC Ferries will get $308 million, BC Transit $86 million. The boost is to help the transportation sector deal with the losses during the pandemic. BC's transportation minister says public transit has been deemed an essential service and is an important part of the Restart Plan in BC.
And a reminder, you can also watch this newscast live on the free CBC Gem app.
And CBC Vancouver is also on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram, and you can follow both of us there as well.
A second lockdown in Israel after a surge in COVID-19 cases. France reporting more than 13,000 new cases today. A look at the impact of the deadly virus around the world just ahead.
And thanks for staying with us during our commercial-free live stream tonight. Well, tensions have been running high this week in a small fishing community on Nova Scotia's Fundy Coast.
Commercial fishermen have been challenging a local Mi'kmaq First Nation that has implemented its own licensed and regulated fishery. And as Paul Withers reports, 2 people were arrested today.
This was the day the ill will broke into the open. At a wharf near Weymouth, where First Nations fishing boats are tied up, where commercial fishermen showed up in numbers today. 2 people were arrested for assault and removed from the scene. On the wharf, Indigenous and commercial fishermen faced each other.
Because we're Native, it is our treaty right to fish, no matter what the fishing season is, because we were here first.
A flotilla of commercial fishing boats from southwest Nova Scotia have converged on St. Mary's Bay. Here, the Sebaganakity Band have launched their own moderate livelihood lobster fishery while the commercial season is closed. They say it's a treaty right recognized by the Supreme Court of Canada.
It actually states in our treaties that we don't need a license because this is our homeland of Mi'kmaq and Turtle Island.
The Department of Fisheries and Oceans says it's a violation of the Fisheries Act. The commercial fishermen say it's unfair and has been going on for years openly or under the guise of a communal fishery where the catch cannot be sold.
There has to be a stop to out-of-season fishing and the illegal activities that are surrounding that. So 2 nights ago, the fishermen advised, they told Conservation and Protection that if they don't want to do the job, to look for ghost traps and deal with the illegal trap issue, that they are going to do it.
Today, commercial fishing vessels steamed by wharves where First Nations boats remain tied up after a chaotic night.
We just want to ensure the safety of our people that are fishing. So we can't have them in the water. If DFO is not there to protect our people, we have no choice but to wait until we have bigger boats to to run alongside their big boats.
He says they will be back on the water on Saturday, while the Assembly of Mi'kmaq Chiefs has issued a state of emergency for mainland Nova Scotia until Tuesday. In the meantime, the RCMP say in the last 24 hours here, they have received complaints of shots fired, assault, threats, and property damage, all of which is under investigation. Paul Withers, CBC News, Saulnier.
We, of course, talk a lot about the COVID-19 situation in our province, but around the world, cases are surging in many countries, more than 13,000 cases in France today. India's now surpassed 5.2 million. So we're going to take a look at various countries around the world to see how they're coping during the pandemic coming up.
Yep, scary and concerning, and we'll have those numbers for you coming back in just a few moments. Stay with us. Well, Israel is entering its second COVID-19 lockdown after a surge in cases, making it the first country in the world to reimpose the restrictions.
We will get to Israel in just a moment, but first, a look at how countries around the world are coping with the coronavirus pandemic. France is reporting more than 13,000 new COVID-19 cases over the past 24 hours. That's a new record since the start of the pandemic, while the daily death toll jumped to a 4-month high. Spain's official death toll has now surpassed 30,000. Total cases increased beyond 600,000 as Spain becomes the first European country to reach that threshold. Fresh restrictions on social gatherings in England, potentially involving limiting pub opening hours, appear likely to happen soon, as the British government seeks to suppress a sharp spike in new coronavirus infections. The WHO in Latin America is warning the region is reopening too soon. COVID-19 cases in Colombia's border area with Venezuela have increased tenfold in just the last 2 weeks. Death rates are climbing in parts of Mexico, with similar trends in Ecuador, Costa Rica, Bolivia, and areas of Argentina. The metropolitan government of South Korea's capital, Seoul, is seeking major damages against a church for causing the spread of the virus. A fresh wave of infections erupted at the church, whose members attended a large protest in downtown Seoul in mid-August. The outbreak has driven triple-digit increases in daily cases for more than a month now. India is now reporting 5.2 million cases of COVID-19. The virus has killed more than 84,000 people. China says imported coronavirus cases climbed to 32 over the previous 24 hours. The country has gone more than a month, though, without reporting any locally transmitted cases within its borders. And New Zealand is reporting no new confirmed cases for the first time in more than 5 weeks. And as we mentioned, Israel has now imposed a second lockdown because of an increase in COVID-19 cases.
And as Margaret Evans reports, it comes just as the Jewish high holiday begins.
Lots of balls in the air, but not many masks and very little social distancing. Tel Aviv's waterfront more crowded than usual as Israelis tried to soak up that last bit of beach time before heading into lockdown again.
We live really close to the beach, so it'll be really hard not coming here for a few weeks. People were not careful and the government wasn't restrictive enough.
The lockdown, which will last at least 3 weeks, coincides with the start of the Jewish high holidays. The idea being that life and business tend to slow. But restaurant owners like Avi Shetrit say it's a disaster.
We have a restaurant 22 years working, and now we have to close again, and we don't know how it will affect us.
Police were on the road from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, questioning motorists about their destinations even before the lockdown began mid-afternoon. Israel tackled the coronavirus aggressively back in March, even setting up separate voting stations for those isolating. Critics say the government lifted the lockdown too soon and failed to curb large gatherings, in particular in ultra-Orthodox communities. Around 5,500 people are now being infected every day, a staggering number for such a small country.
In a democracy, you have to have the trust of the people.
Political scientist Gail Talshir says regular protests against the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Jerusalem are unprecedented.
I think what we're going to see over this lockdown is that the people are not going to be so submissive or so approving of this lockdown.
Yesterday, Netanyahu said the number of severe cases in Israel is on the rise, warning that lockdown rules could become even stricter. But he also knows he's walking a very fine line. Margaret Evans, CBC News, London.
COVID cases in Canada are also on the rise. The average rate of daily new cases across the country has more than doubled in just 1 month.
But the number of COVID-19 patients in hospitals remains low and stable so far. The likely reason is about 2/3 of the newly emerging cases are in people under 40. Younger people aren't usually the most vulnerable.
But as carriers and spreaders, they endanger those who are. Katie Nicholson shows us how the risk is outpacing the response.
Stephanie Tripodi makes drinks for others, but by the end of her shift, she could use one too to soothe her COVID worries.
It's just a little bit like worrisome because you really never know. Like you don't know who the people you're like interacting with on a daily basis, who they've been in contact with. So you're really just like kind of just like gambling.
The bartender has mixed emotions about having to work as COVID cases climb.
It's a tough call because, you know, you need to make money and you need to pay rent and pay bills.
Her apprehension shared in Ottawa, where people 6 feet apart lined all along the block for COVID tests. They tell the story of a province's upward surge. Today, 401 reported cases in Ontario, the highest daily number since June. An acknowledgement action is needed.
We cannot run at government speed. We have to run at COVID speed.
Next week, pharmacies here will help pitch in with testing. And the Premier hints he will be cracking down on COVID by bringing in further penalties for big parties in even more communities across the province. Toronto's mayor is also promising more rules.
We did discuss the notion of sorting out some of the legalities, if I can put it that way, of what more we might do with respect to masks.
Medical experts agree increased penalties and enforcement might help flatten Canada's curve.
A lot of people will not change their behavior if there's no consequences to their actions.
As the trend pushes upward, some doctors say even more restrictive measures are needed.
We are going to have to dial back, and the longer we wait, the worse it's going to be.
But for now, no new closures, no new lockdowns, and always the chance of infection. And like many Canadians, it's a risk she has to take. Katie Nicholson, CBC News, Toronto.
Bloc Québécois leader Yves-François Blanchet has tested positive for COVID-19. The party made the announcement today, adding that he will remain in isolation until the 26th. The party says Blanchet is doing well despite the positive test. His wife tested positive for the illness earlier this week. Much of the party's caucus has been self-isolating since a staff member tested positive on Monday.
Word tonight that U.S. Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg has died of complications from pancreatic cancer. She was 87.
Her death is sending shockwaves through Washington tonight, just weeks from a presidential election.
And while her open seat is sure to now alter and dominate the campaign, as Lindsay Duncombe tells us tonight, she's being remembered as a trailblazer.
The fight for women's equality in the United States wasn't just Ruth Bader Ginsburg's life's work. She lived the struggle.
She saw injustice in the world. She fought it. And she did so while ascending to the highest court in the country, but very much staying herself.
Ginsburg was born in Depression-era Brooklyn to Jewish immigrants. She decided at Cornell University she wanted to be a lawyer.
My family had grave misgivings because who wanted to hire a lady lawyer in those days?
Ginsburg was one of 9 women at Harvard Law School in a class of 500. She studied alongside her husband, Martin.
We were best friends, and he was the first guy I had ever dated who cared that I had a brain.
When her husband was sick with cancer, Ruth attended both of their classes and cared for their baby daughter. She graduated top of her class, but firms wouldn't hire her. After 41 rejections, she turned to teaching.
Mr. Chief Justice, and may it please the court.
In the 1970s, as a lawyer for the American Civil Liberties Union, Ginsburg argued 6 cases before the Supreme Court, challenging sex-based discrimination in the law. She won 5 of them, changing the legal landscape for American women. An appointment to the D.C. Appeals Court led to the Supreme Court.
I am proud to nominate for Associate Justice of the Supreme Court, Judge Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
As the court moved to the right, Ginsburg became known for reading her sharp, scathing dissents from the bench. Her closest friend was her ideological opposite. She and conservative Justice Antonin Scalia shared a love of good opera and good argument. In 2013, a law student started this blog, calling Ginsburg Notorious RBG, a play on the rapper Notorious B.I.G. It stuck.
There she is, also known as the Notorious RBG.
Despite the worship, there was pressure on Ginsburg to retire before the end of the Obama presidency so that she could be replaced with another liberal justice. She didn't. During the 2016 campaign, Ginsburg was openly critical of Donald Trump and later apologized. With his election, Ginsburg's status as a hero of the left escalated. There were films, a documentary,
the closest thing to a superhero I know,
and a Hollywood feature.
What did you say your name was?
Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
The 2-time cancer survivor even took her workout routine to late-night TV.
I'm cramping and I'm working out with an 85-year-old woman.
Underlying it all, concern from the left that the tiny woman who changed so much would not survive the Trump presidency. Those fears were realized today. Lindsay Duncombe, CBC News, Washington.
Gargle and spit. Coming up next, more on the Made in BC test to help make it easier for children and teenagers to check whether they have COVID-19.
With governments across the country trying to beat down their deficits, you may think entertainment write-offs were written off a long time ago. Not so. Companies still get tax breaks for entertainment expenses, even tickets to sports games. And as Ian Hannamansing reports on tonight's Your Money, those little deductions add up to a lot.
It is 7 months away from completion, and as its name suggests, GM Place is part of the new generation of stadiums, built with private enterprise money. But when the new basketball team, the Grizzlies, and the Hockey Canucks begin playing there this fall, some of their ticket buyers will enjoy an indirect government subsidy.
Hundreds of companies and individuals will claim their season's tickets as a business expense. It could mean a tax saving each year of thousands of dollars, and it's available for any form of entertainment and sports. The federal government says it has never calculated how much this entertainment deduction costs.
Here's how the deduction works. The price of a pair of Grizzlies season tickets in what's called the club section is about $7,400. Half of that can be claimed by a business as an entertainment expense on its tax return. If a company's tax rate is, for example, 45%, the pair of season tickets allows the company to save $1,665 in tax. Although the government hasn't added it up, let's consider just one professional sports team, the Grizzlies. The team hasn't yet played a game, but already it's sold 1,200 season tickets to companies in this club section, with exclusive access to restaurants and bars. That's about $4.5 million worth of seats. And then there are the luxury boxes, at more than $100,000 a year to watch basketball and hockey. All 88 boxes have been sold. That's another $9 million. And the team doesn't know how many of the remaining 17,000 seats will be claimed as a business expense. Why is this considered an expense? Well, during a tour of GM Place a few weeks ago, some business people said tickets are crucial for softening up clients and potential clients.
I think if I take guests and they enjoy themselves, that'll help corporate business, and it's generally a good arrangement for all involved.
But it isn't always strictly business. It can also be a nice perk.
Well, actually, our company has a policy about half the tickets are used for our clients, and a quarter for the employees, and a quarter for the families of the key directors of the company.
My own personal recommendation to our internal finance committee would be to roll this back, to not carry on with it.
Some say it isn't fair for businesses to get a tax break on sports tickets.
I question whether there would be popular support for this amongst the ordinary citizens.
Some of the stories we're following tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
The BCTF would not be taking this step if we didn't feel that government had failed to keep teachers and students safe.
The BC Teachers Union is asking the Labour Relations Board to step in. It says the province isn't addressing its concerns about working conditions during the COVID-19 pandemic, but the government is defending its school restart program.
We're making an extraordinary effort to try to suppress your vapors so that air quality is as best as we can expect.
The remnants of the massive New West Pier fire is sending more than just stifling smoke into the area. Concerns now about toxins seeping into the Fraser River. The fire crews say they are working with the province to contain as much of it as possible.
And COVID-19 has claimed 3 more lives in BC, and 139 new cases are being reported today. Provincial Health Officer Dr. Bonnie Henry says the cases we're seeing today are a direct result of how we spent our Labor Day long weekend. There are now a record high 1,803 active coronavirus cases in our province.
Getting a COVID test in Ontario and Quebec can mean long lineups. But just yesterday, BC became the first province to approve a convenient spit and gargle test for kids.
And as Susanna De Silva shows us tonight, that's getting a lot of attention.
The first one felt like my nose was like I had a nosebleed.
The first one was a swab up Raymond Wu's nose for a COVID test, but he has now gotten to try something new and be the example for kids around BC.
You know, it was like I was swimming and accidentally got some water in my mouth.
Some children may do this on their own.
He used the new swish, gargle, and spit method to collect samples. The goals being comfort and speed, as parents and kids can do most of the work, and reduce exposure for healthcare workers. Mariam Abdi has been administering them for about a week.
Mouth gargles are much easier for kids, so it's less traumatic for kids. And we involve parents in the picture, so it makes it a little bit easier.
The samples are still processed the same way as nasal swabs, and doctors who developed the method say their research has shown it is about 98% as accurate as samples collected through swabs, and more accurate than simply spitting into a tube. Other provinces are paying attention.
And that work is underway in Alberta, but I don't have a timeline as to when it might be able to be moved forward.
As soon as I saw that, I went right to our team and I said, I saw gargling with salt water, putting in. I think that's great for kids. I think it's great for everyone.
Nova Scotia says it's also looking into it, but one issue everywhere, including BC, is a short supply of the tubes needed.
Pretty much 2 hours before the center even opened, there were 44 people in the lineup.
So the new test isn't going to help the situation for parents outside of BC right now. Kiavashna Jaffe waited 5 hours to get his toddler tested in Ottawa.
On a chilly day in Ottawa, to watch these kids stand in the lineup for that long, it's wrong, and it's just not fair for them.
The new method for kids is available at testing centres throughout BC, with the hope that adults will also have the option at some point. Susanna De Silva, CBC News, Vancouver.
It has been a terrible year south of the border for wildfires. So what has BC been doing right? That answer next.
6:33 Friday night. The weekend is here.
Woohoo!
And so is the smoke. We want it to go away. Just want it to leave, don't we?
We do.
Well, guess what? It's about to make its way out. And Joe's going to be here next to tell us when that's going to happen, along with a bunch of rain heading our way.
There's about 11,400 pennies in this. I think the pennies themselves weigh about 65 pounds. And it took me almost 3 years to make. Each one of these rows took me about an hour, so I think, yeah, about 300 hours altogether. I remember hearing Blow It High Dough and just the first notes in it. And this is back in a time when everybody was listening to glam metal and all the singers were these high pitchy singers. And then you had Gord that came in with this really bassy vocal and these really cool riffs at the beginning. And I was like, oh yeah, this is my new band. And then when you heard that Gord was gonna die, wow, it was just heartbreaking. So yeah, I think it was just a way to attribute to somebody that's brought so much music and joy into my life and, you know, my family and my friends and all the people I know. And I think I want to do another one of the entire band because, you know, that was part of it, right? It was, you know, all that music that I fell in love with, you know, it wasn't just Gord's lyrics and voice, it was the whole band playing together. In the beginning, I was sorting them out. I mean, and you can see just over time, I mean, I've got pennies here from, I think, 1939 all the way up to 2002 when they discontinued them. But I wasn't getting that really nice contrast that I wanted. There's a product for jewelry making called liver of sulfur that I use that dyes them black. I started finding these really interesting designs because underneath there'd be air bubbles caught when I was soaking them in these glass containers. So I was getting these really cool designs. It's the hardest thing for an artist is try to put a price on your work. I don't know how you do that. If we could get it somewhere where people could enjoy it for a while, you know, I don't want to see it, you know, sitting on some private collector's wall somewhere or something. I want people to be able to see it and enjoy it, and, you know, and share the experience and talk about the music they love and the country they love and everything that comes with it.
When your backyard is burning, is anywhere safe? I'm Adrienne Lamb, the host of a new podcast, World on Fire. Join us on the front lines of wildfires burning around the world. Find it wherever you get your podcasts.
While it has been an unusually calm fire season here in BC, smoke from fires on the U.S. West Coast reminds us this region is far from immune.
Fire experts warn this is just a temporary reprieve from a climate change trend. And as Greg Rasmussen tells us, there are lessons to be learned from the fires south of the border.
So the outside scorches, but you don't have to pick it off very far before you get to unburnt.
This forest was hit by a wildfire just a few weeks ago. Conditions were bone dry, threatening dozens of nearby homes.
Contrast here, what happened on this slope? Fire came down this slope towards the road. Firefighters were here. They were able to stop it at the road and prevent it from moving onto the other side and towards the homes.
But it was stopped. Several years ago, this forest was made more resistant to fire. Dead, dry timber was removed and the trees pruned.
Well, you can see all the lower branches have been removed, around us here. So the idea behind that is that if there's a fire on the ground, it doesn't have fuel to get up into the treetops above us.
Climate change means mega fires like those seen in the U.S. will become more common, and people living in or near forested areas need to adapt.
It's critical. This helps protect communities, and really we need to be moving into doing more of this at a larger scale.
And the grey smoke first of all, and then the black smoke.
Paul Edmonds shot this video a few weeks ago from his front porch.
I could see this small column of smoke coming up, maybe the size of a campfire, and then must have been 5 minutes later, it must have been the size of a tennis court. 5 minutes after that, it was a roaring, a football field.
This time, only one house was lost after embers landed on its cedar roof. Edmonds credits the preventative work in the nearby woods with helping to save the rest.
So we have to be much more aware, and we have to look at the warning signs, what's happened in California, Oregon, and now closer to us, Washington.
But removing all the potential fuel isn't easy. It's tough, slow work in a province covered top to bottom in trees.
It makes a huge difference. Pretty much if it will stop the fire from going up on the trees. I live myself in the forest. I've been evacuated a few times for fire living in the Okanagan. It's the way it is, and the more we do this, the less it's dangerous for people.
This relatively small patch of forest illustrates the scale of the problem. You have to multiply this by millions and millions of trees.
We know that with climate change, fires are becoming more common, that they're bigger fires and more intense fires.
This expert says what the U.S. is experiencing should be viewed as a warning for Canadians.
And so with warmer climate, longer fire seasons and more pronounced droughts, the projection is for greater area burned. We're on that trajectory already in Canada.
A gloomy picture, but amidst the ashes, a small sign of hope.
Look at the grass just starting to come back in here.
Just weeks after the fire, life is already taking hold in the areas that had been treated to be fire resistant.
Greg Rasmussen, CBC News, Penticton, BC. Yeah, important to do that preventative work long before the forests catch fire.
Yeah, absolutely. And, as I say, climate change is very much a concern for us right now. And we can't take this temporary reprieve, as this summer for granted. And Joe, of course.
You said it, Lien. In fact, the summer that we have right now is the anomaly, Lien. So enjoying a quieter year, but this is definitely the anomalous year, I'm afraid.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we're seeing it, it's just south of the border, right? And that smoke wafting up here. So Joe, I think many people are wondering heading into the weekend, when is that going to finally leave us?
I think we've been asking that question every day, waiting for this day to come, and it is finally here. It doesn't look like it behind me, but air quality is much improved across the South Coast. I actually had a chance to talk to Environment Canada meteorologist Armel Castellan today. We had a great chat. Take a listen to his thoughts on how things are clearing out from the south to the north, and that's exactly what we're seeing tonight. Take a listen.
It's moving its way up from the Juan de Fuca, up through Puget Sound a little bit, and then in the San Juan Islands and the Gulf Islands. So parts of Vancouver Island are already in that cleaner air. It's still going to mix around. We'll see pockets of smoke still, and it's going to be thick at times. And then it's going to eventually reach the lower mainland and really affect you and everybody else.
So really seeing that improved air quality over the next couple of days for everyone. This was all part of a Facebook and YouTube live chat we had. So thanks to everyone who joined and had questions, some great questions out there. By the way, you can head to our website and watch the whole thing. But this is one of my favorite ones, somebody asking why cities closer to the fires didn't get air quality as bad as we did up here in Vancouver and Victoria. Take a listen.
In a lot of ways, you can be closer to a fire, but the micrometeorology means that, the winds are just going, upslope and north, so heading towards us. you're not going to be affected by it, and you could be, a couple 100 kilometers away, whereas we might be several more 100 kilometers away and dealing with that stagnant pattern.
If you want to see two meteorologists nerd out about smoke forecast modeling, you should definitely check it out. But this is the latest snapshot across the south coast. Notice those yellows. That's moderate. We are no longer in the severe air quality health index range. I'm showing you the fine particulate matter, but this does translate to moderate air quality on the low to high scale. So still getting a few spots of high. You can see the red in through the inlet, which is basically where I am right now, the smoke lingering at lower levels, but things are improving. This is the best air quality we have had in about 8 days. And that's all thanks to this spinning, unstable air that's mixing that fine particulate matter out. Finally, check out east of Chilliwack, though, catching some lightning strikes thanks to this convective nature. And Nanaimo, you've had thunderstorms in your neck of the woods for a couple of hours now. I wouldn't be surprised if we see some pooling on the road. So this is very convective in nature. And when we say that, it's very isolated, some areas getting downpours, and yes, Metro Vancouver, downtown anyway, really still waiting for the rain. Watch as I take you through this forecast, catching the showers tonight in the next couple of hours. In fact, for Metro Vancouver, we will see those showers move in. The forecast for the weekend is also wet, but we will see some sunny breaks as well as we head into Sunday and Monday. This spinning wheel will be our story for a couple of days, but Sunday and Monday, sunny breaks in between. So again, really hard to say exactly who will get what when, but be prepared for some showers tonight, showers tomorrow morning, and also some sunshine. Also watching this big rain event, this Pineapple Express, our first atmospheric river, looks like Wednesday at this point, and it does look like that fire hose of moisture will be aimed at Vancouver Island first. Still some uncertainty as to how wet and windy we'll get here in Metro Vancouver. All that being said, it's going to look very different than it does right now behind me for next week. So enjoy the fresh air, and we'll talk about Pineapple Expresses early next week.
Yes, on to something new, which is fine. Thanks, Joe. And this isn't the first time BC has experienced smoky skies. People here have become used to the haze in recent years, with wildfires really becoming part of the normal summer routine.
Yeah, the smoke has caused air quality to rise at dangerously unhealthy levels dozens of times over the past 2 decades. Here's a look at BC's smoky history over the past 20 years.
It's scary. To be able to actually see the flames and see how intense the fire was.
Well, this week we've been profiling transgender activists who have helped pave the way for trans rights in Canada.
Tonight is the last one, dedicated to Kimberly Nixon, who fought for human rights legislation for trans people. Here's a look at the impact she made right here in BC.
It was only in 2016, 2017 that laws across the country started to be changed so that trans people were protected under human rights legislation. But long before that, Kimberly Nixon was engaged in a court battle that established this principle that trans people were protected under human rights legislation under the category of sex.
It's not a matter of choice to be a transgender person, and it's not a matter of choice to take it on. It's just, for me, it's a matter of survival again. And if this is allowed to continue, then it can happen in any workplace, and that's not okay.
The courts had responded to the rights and said this was discrimination, and they felt that within the letter of the law, this discrimination was permitted.
I'm just really afraid that when a transgender person calls Vancouver Rape Relief, which you know, has been the case in the past, that they're turned away.
The real change that we needed to see was legislative change. And that change came across several years in different provinces and finally federally in 2017. And that was to write into the human rights codes of each of the provinces and the federal government, and into the criminal code as well. So the Human Rights Code wrote in protection on the basis of gender identity and gender expression, and the criminal code said that activity against trans people could be construed as a hate crime and could be prosecuted as a hate crime.
They're not meant to be in Mid-Chosen, but somehow a group of Sandhill cranes wound up on Vancouver Island. We'll explain next.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell. Here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
Stream your favorite CBC dramas or comedies 24/7 on demand on the CBC Gem app. Plus, you can live stream CBC Vancouver News. Check it out at gem.cbc.ca. And never miss a special programming series or contest. Subscribe to CBC Vancouver's e-newsletter at cbc.ca/Vancouver inbox and keep connected with us.
Well, the smoky skies have brought some unusual visitors to Vancouver Island, a whole flock of them. Yes, a swoop of Sandhill cranes has set up shop in this Machosen field. Known for their unusual call and crimson caps, Sandhill cranes are migratory birds, and it's likely these ones are heading from northern BC down to the southern U.S. or Mexico, but they don't usually make stopovers on the West Coast. When heavy smoke rolled across the province, many migratory birds likely found themselves in serious trouble and sought the safety of low-lying land.
And they know where they would normally stop, where it would be safe and where food is available. But if they've had to take a detour, they're just like us. When we have to take a detour, we don't know the right places to go, the right places to stop.
And so for now, they feed and wait, but you better take your pictures of this unusual visitor soon. With the smoke finally clearing this weekend, there's a good chance that these cranes will pick up and take flight soon. Métis pilot and airline owner Tara Fraser has another thing to add to her resume: DC comic book character.
She's being featured in their newest graphic novel series, The Wonderful Women of History.
The CBC caught up with her to ask her how it feels to be included in a project with other trailblazing women.
It feels a little bit strange, feels a little bit not real, but it's also, I feel really honored to be, to have my story alongside, some of the most inspiring, incredible, warriors of our time. To see my name on that list with all those unbelievable ass-kicking women, it was just, it was pretty wild. I hope people read these stories and are inspired to follow their own dreams and do good in the world. I hope people are inspired to connect with their own superpower, because every single human has their own special, unique superpower.
Good for her. Did you notice on the comic page that Ruth Bader Ginsburg was in the
Yeah,
as well?
I did. She was right in the center. Yeah, what a great list. Yeah.
Okay, it's Friday. That must mean it's time for a cocktail or two. And a Canadian-made rye has been named the best whiskey in the world.
That's right. It's called Alberta Premium Cask Strength, and it's produced by Calgary-based Alberta distillers.
Liquor is made using only Alberta rye grain and water from the Rockies.
We use a pot still for this particular type of spirit, and brand new white oak barrels, and age it for many years, and all the magic happens.
The whiskey beat out more than 1,200 other ryes, scotches, and bourbons for the title of World's Best, so named by the 2021 edition of the prestigious Jim Murray Whiskey Bible.
But if you want to try it for yourself, good luck. The supply of, well, there you go. Alberta Premium is very limited, and with this kind of acclaim, you can probably expect it'll disappear pretty quickly from store shelves.
That's pretty good. Usually the you'd think it would be Scotland, but the Japanese whiskeys do really well.
Yeah, they do really well. And but we did have a Canadian whiskey, the rye. What was it from Crown Royal that did really well a couple of years ago?
Well,
Yeah,
it's good for them. Good for them in Alberta.
It is great.
All right, just a reminder before we go, you can always watch this newscast online, cbc.ca/BC. Our next local news, Dan Burt's here at 11, right after the National. Tonight, of course, marks the start of Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year.
That's right, and challah bread bakers were hard at work today despite the pandemic. And we leave you tonight with some photos of one of these bakeries in action. Have a great weekend.
Good night.